and welcome to Escaping Kasterborous, the podcast where we rewatch, reminisce, and review everything Doctor Who from 2005 to present. My name is Rich, and I'm joined by someone who's very good at taking 6 dicks to the face. It's Amy.
What?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Go work it out, go on.
6 dicks
We just
to the
watched
face.
Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. 6 dicks to the face.
6 dicks to the face.
You know this.
Do I?
What in this episode, or this two-parter, has taken 6 dicks to the face?
6 dicks to the face.
Well, this podcast is going to be an hour long,
I'm
mainly
so
because
confused.
we're sitting and waiting for Amy to realise which character has taken 6 dicks to the face.
I don't know.
Broadcast on the 21st of April and the 28th of April 2007. This is the first two-parter in Series 3 of Doctor Who, featuring David Tennant as the 10th Doctor and Freema Agyeman as Martha Jones. Amy, 6 dicks to the face.
I'm so confused.
The Doctor and Martha find themselves in 1930 in New York during the Great Depression, where people from Hooverville are being turned into pig slaves, and turns out our favourite dustbins are back again, being all ruthless after the events of Army of Ghost and Doomsday, because it's the Cult of Skaro back again with Dalek Sec being all weird. 6 dicks to the face.
Are you talking about Dalek Sec?
I'm talking about Dalek Sec. We get there eventually.
Are you talking about when he absorbs the dude?
Are you implying that Mr. Diagoras has 6 penises?
No, I meant like when he absorbs him, he literally wraps his tentacles around him. Is that not what you're on about?
Well, I am referring to Dalek Sec, mainly because
But are you talking about the fact that it looks like it has 6 penises on his head?
He has 6 penises on his face, Amy.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm very surprised you didn't just go with pig bitch, to be honest. Because...
Oh my god, why didn't I think of that? Oh, I suck at this.
For anybody not in the know, and
Which is
by
all
not
of
in the
you.
know, I mean basically all of you except our friends who listen. We were once on a Discord evening with our friends, and
Was I drunk? I'm assuming I was drunk.
I don't know. And as me and Rich do, we kind of take the mick out of each other a lot. And I said something to him, and in return, he called me a pig bitch. So now I kind of not go by pig bitch, like he never calls me that.
I don't ever call you. It just whenever it comes
life.
to a conversation, it's always like, oh yeah, I called you pig bitch that one time, and now it's.
But
just
I'm
a
quite
thing.
surprised in the episode about pig slaves that you didn't go with pig bitch.
I was too busy thinking about Dalek Sec's big fat throbbing cocks. So
Delicious.
this podcast has taken
Why
a
do
turn.
we always start on this level?
We are 3 minutes in, and we've taken a goddamn turn.
Sorry, folks.
I completely lost my train of thought thinking about
Well, you were talking about the episode plot.
Daddy Sec. I was talking about the episode because yes, this is the first Dalek two-parter we have in this. Actually, first Dalek two-parter. No, it's not the first Dalek two-parter. Not technically, anyway. First two-parter of Series 3. We've just come from Grid, and funnily enough, Martha and the Doctor are still pretty game to be, going out and doing stuff together, even after the events of Gridlock, where Martha felt, I would argue, for the first time, at least aside from. First time when she's away that this could go badly in Gridlock.
Yeah.
Because Shakespeare Code, she's kind of convinced it can't happen because she's like, the future still happens, I'm still here, and the Doctor's like...
Even though the Doctor's like, have you ever seen Back to the Future?
Exactly. And obviously Gridlock, she's stuck on a motorway with a macra beneath her, so it's like, yeah, this may not go down all that well.
Yeah, kind of, we don't really get an explanation as to why he kind of decides that she can stick around, because in...
I guess perhaps it's after he opened up to her.
Maybe.
At the end of Gridlock, that there was all this conversation off screen.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Because before he was like, oh, one more trip then, go on, I've taken you into the past, now I'll take you into the future. And then it's all of just suddenly
Let's
just
go
like,
to... Maybe, actually,
carry
you know
on.
what? Since the first thing she says is like, thank goodness it's not the new one. It's the OG. Maybe that was what he offered to be nice. Let's go to OG New York, not New York.
I see, yeah.
And let's go and see it at a time when New York arguably wasn't all that great. So I guess that was an interesting.
1930s, so was
actually,
anything that great?
Yeah,
They've just come out of World War One, for crying out loud. Like...
I mean, actually, because the Doctor didn't know when they were, assumedly, the Doctor said, New York! And the TARDIS took them to New York.
New York.
At some point in time. Could
Sure.
this have been the TARDIS knowing where to take the Doctor? Probably.
Well, I mean, it is slightly sentient, isn't it?
That is
So I
alluded.
think
That is alluded
a lot
to.
of the
Doctor's
time,
wife,
I kind of assume that when they end up places, it's because the TARDIS has sensed that there's some sort of danger or something that the Doctor needs to like partake in.
partake in. Oh,
What, is
Doctor,
that
people are
Is
dying.
that not grammar?
Go play with the dying lot, says the TARDIS.
No, I don't.
Wow.
I mean, not. That was mean. You took my words and you spun them. That was horrible.
I did, because I'm the worst.
How dare you?
Yeah. So
You know what I meant.
I did.
Rude.
So I'm gonna get this out of the way straight away, because this is kind of this was an episode, or a two-parter, I should say. A story is the correct terminology, where people weren't all that happy with this episode, based on where things go with, Six Dick Sec. He's here.
Why have you made that thing?
The number of times I made face penises jokes during my time at Who Culture mentioning Dalek Sec, which is probably only like once or twice, but face penises, it's never not going to be face penises.
Okay.
It wasn't always that brilliantly received, if I remember rightly. I don't remember how I felt when I first watched this. I mean, I would say,
No,
more
me
than
either.
likely, I was excited.
Well,
Do you
yeah,
know
it's
why?
Daleks, isn't it?
There are Daleks in it, so of
Yep.
course I'm going to be game for it. But the pigs, like, it's the first time that an enemy so serious as the Daleks, I would argue, had been given a little more of an interesting, a different scenario to be in, and
Yeah.
a weird supporting cast. So, like, pig slaves.
Yeah, it
It's
seems
like,
a bit. I always think this
okay.
when I watch this episode, because I was talking about this in the last episode when we spoke about the upcoming trailer for these like pair of episodes, and I said like it seems really odd that in the trailer and in kind of like the first half of the first episode, I guess, that they play off the pig slaves to almost be the villain of the week. And I feel like maybe they should have stuck with that route for the trailer as a whole, because I know I've talked about it, but I feel like bringing the Daleks in so like presently in the trailer ruined the surprise of them being the masters in this episode. Like, you kind of wanted that secret reveal and the Dalek imagery of the circle on the lift to be like, oh my god, it's the Daleks, what a shock. Like, I thought the pig people were the sort of main villain of the episode. Like, what do the pig people have to do with this? And I feel like it probably would have transpired a little bit more sequentially, rather than it just being, oh, it's another Dalek story that we're looking at next week. And then when you get to the episode and you're like, well, where are the Daleks? And it's kind of a little bit of that weird in-between state where I wish they'd gone one way with it and surprised you rather than, because I can understand the idea of the pigmen, but then at the same time I also question, when have Daleks ever used slaves? Like, ever?
Well,
I mean, I don't know Classic Who, so I can't speak for all of Classic Who. I'm sure somebody in the comments or like on
overt sort of mindless slaves. You can go back to 1966 with the no, not 1966. What's about 1964? They would have not left it 3 years. 1964 in the Dalek invasion of Earth with the Robomen that were mindless drone humans that could do
1964.
Their bidding. Yes.
When did Doctor Who start?
1963.
Oh, so it was literally 1 year after they started.
I mean, I don't know why 1966 came to mind. It's definitely It's definitely 1964 because
No, 1966 is the World Cup.
Shut up. 1964 because immediately, like, obviously the Daleks blew up in popularity. Dalek Mania in late 1963. It was going to be they were going to be back pretty sharpish. And I'm pretty certain. I'm pretty certain it was 1964. But now I've questioned myself. I need to double check.
Sorry, I questioned you, and we weren't sure.
It's okay. Where are my Daleks?
I just like to know that we've got the facts right, because you know that there will be a listener that will be like, no, you got it wrong. Not in a bad way.
You did it wrong, you dumbass.
Just like, if we're wrong, then apologies. We're only human.
Nah, it's not. I'm pretty certain it's 1964.
In which case, then I'll shut up, because clearly my lack of knowledge is showing.
Yeah, but yeah, they had Robomen back in the 60s, 1964. Right. I am correct.
Okay, well,
1964. So they had slaves back in 1964.
Okay, so it's not a new concept, but it's just one that we've not seen.
And they've worked with humans in the past in Resurrection of the Daleks. They had a whole human army of Dalek soldiers, and Davros is like, bitch, what? Why do you have human soldiers doing what? That's so peculiar. So, and then they have like Bracewell in. I know he's not actually human, but like in Victory of the Daleks, the World War II episode with Churchill, Bracewell.
Matt Smith's era.
Bracewell is a bomb. They've done this sort of thing before. They've had cronies that aren't necessarily Dalek looking, so it's not anything new. I think it's more the fact that they're pigs that just makes it seem so strange.
Yeah. Like, I mean, why?
Is that like a reference to New York in 1930?
Not a clue.
Of some description?
Absolutely not a clue.
I have no idea.
I feel like the pig thing was probably more just kind of the cast and... Not the cast. Start that one again. The crew, like directors, producers, all that, were just kind of sat there going, what animal has shock factor? And they were like,
what animal haven't we anthropomorphized yet?
Like,
what about
pigs?
piggies?
I mean, they're more like boars than pigs, I would argue, because they've got pig ears, but their mouths are more like boarish, I think.
I think it's because if you showed that to a kid, they'd say pig, not boar. So that's probably why they went for that terminology. And also, I mean, speaking of the pig slaves, the makeup is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of see where the chunkiness of the mask around the neck sort of goes into the body and how it's obviously not as thick, but then they are supposed to just be like pig heads on human bodies, I guess, aren't they, really? Maybe? But I honestly don't really know how the whole situation works.
I just thought they looked really good. I mean, even Laszlo's half converted.
I actually think
face.
Laszlo's is the best one.
Like, there's shots when it's quite close up on him, and you can see the movement of his normal bottom lip beneath his prosthetic lip. I'm assuming it's prosthetic. He hasn't got a thing wedged in, like, he hasn't got his little teeth like wedged in his mouth. That would be very difficult to act with. But it's like on his cheeks, like all of the pores of the latex skin, unless it doesn't go out that far, in which case fair enough. But like it looks really good for 2007.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. They definitely put the effort into it.
You've got the cat people in Gridlock, and then the year before in New Earth. They were pretty damn good.
But then we always know that Doctor Who does its physical effects far better than it does its like visual effects.
Yeah, most of the time. But yes,
but you know what I mean.
For the sake of the hero
on
props.
Yeah.
Because there's that same pig you see a lot, which is the hero pig. So that's the one that they put the most detail in, so they can do all the close-ups. Is the one at the front of the elevator at the end, and he's the one that pops up right into frame when they're attacking Hooverville. It's like, yeah, that's the hero one, and there's all the ones with just like the half-assed makeup in the back. Kind of the same with like Ood.
Hence why they're all in darkly lit corridors and dark spaces where you can't see them very well.
And I love the thing I love about this episode is it's so blatantly not set. They haven't gone to New York to film.
Yeah, I said that straight away. I mean,
it's like
Central Park,
Angels Take Manhattan. They're in New York when they were doing that.
Budget.
I'm pretty certain they're in New York for filming that. I might be wrong, but I think they were.
I wouldn't be
Because
surprised.
this is 2012, 2013. They have the budget to go and do that now because Doctor Who's exploded. So
Yeah.
they have the ability to do that. But it's like stood in front of a wall. Oh, this is the base of the Statue of Liberty. Oh, is it? Oh, turn around. Yep, there's a reverse shot of the Statue of Liberty. That's definitely the Statue of Liberty. There's the green screen in the background of 1930s New York. And then here's the very, very clear matte painting buildings in the middle of a park in Cardiff to be Central Park. But it's one of those things, suspension of disbelief, you kind of go along with it.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
it's
you
not
don't expect
horrible.
Doctor Who to be so precise with these things. Like, if they can make a quarry look like a planet, they can make Cardiff look like New York. Because sometimes there are architectural beats that could pass off as somewhere else. Do you remember in Newcastle there was that little Greasy Spoon cafe
Yeah.
beneath the Tyne Bridge?
Yeah, right
When
on the right behind where the Premier Inn and stuff was.
Yeah. There was a point I went there with my mum and dad a couple of years ago, and we were sat in this Greasy Spoon having a full English, so it's very much not, New York food. But it's like the architecture around there and being beneath the base of a big ass bridge. Like, I would argue if you didn't realize that it was Newcastle because you knew Newcastle, you could almost pass something like that off for an American city based on its architecture.
Yeah,
I know that you don't necessarily have that in this episode, and you don't have that in this episode, but it could still pass off.
Considering how little the episode actually needed to be in New York. This episode could have happened anywhere. The only reason it basically happened in New York was so that they could make a joke about going to old New York instead of new New York.
Yeah.
And so that they could use the Empire State Building as the backdrop for
It's like
the
they could have
lightning
easily made it just Big Ben and done it in Britain.
Yeah.
But then, the setting of the Great Depression and finding people to be taken away to be turned into pigmen and so on and so forth. That could have
it just
been
works.
anywhere.
I mean, like you said, suspension of disbelief. I feel like that's kind of part of the charm of this era of Doctor Who is that because they don't have the budget, you just kind of, I mean, as kids, you just accept it anyway because you're so enveloped in the story and just how everything sort of is going for the main characters. You don't really put too much attention into the fact that they're probably just in the middle of a random park.
Yeah.
But as adults, I kind of don't really it's noticeable for maybe a shot when, like you said, when you're looking over the Hooverville in the park and you've got the skyline of New York in the background and you kind of look at it and you're like, yeah, that's definitely just a painting that's been superimposed.
It's a matte painting.
But you also only see it for maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and it's really not that important because then you're straight into the action of it anyway. And then for the most part, apart from when they're at the top of the Empire State Building, you don't really see the skyline of New York anyway. So, doesn't really matter. I mean, most of the time they're literally in the sewers in this episode, for Christ's sake.
That's one of the clever things about it is the fact that you've got Hooverville in Central Park, which is a park. You have some grass and some trees. It's Central Park. Look, I'm stood in a bush next to the A45. I'm in Central Park. If you can't see the road, I'm in Central Park. And then you've got the sewer, you've got the inside of that one floor of the Empire State Building, you've got the roof, and then you've got the laboratory downstairs. And the theatre. That's it. I love the blatant shots of the theatre being empty in front of Tallulah when she's first singing, and then there's that one very quick shot of, look, the front row has some people in it, therefore there's people in it, and then for some reason, the upper circle, there's David Tennant scanning a Dalek blob, and no one's up there. And it's
he's literally just empty.
I mean,
they
again,
clearly didn't have a very popular show.
You could read. I mean, it could be because it's you read into it and you think, oh, it's the Depression. Not everyone can afford to go to the theatre. So
probably
that's reading into it a bit too much. But Helen Rayner wrote this episode and was the first woman to write a televised Dalek story.
Oh.
And the first woman to write for a story for the revived series too.
Good for you, Helen Rayner.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, Stephen Moffat was set to write this, the two parts for the series, but then he didn't, and then he ended up writing, that episode in series 3 a bit later on in the series that we'll get to. Come on, Amy. Stephen Moffat, series 3, the big one.
Why do I not remember?
I'm putting you on the spot here. Now this is
My
not,
knowledge of Doctor Who
this
is nowhere near as good as yours.
No. This is not a case of you not knowing Doctor Who, because Amy does know Doctor Who. This is me putting Amy on the spot, and you could be the cleverest person in the world. You get put on the spot about something, you can panic.
I always freak out. Oh, Blink's this series.
Blink is this series.
Of course it is.
But it's
I'm not
Dr.
going to lie.
Light.
I always forget that Moffat wrote Blink.
And that Martha's in it, because she's in it for like 2 scenes.
Yeah,
like the Doctor's in it for like 2 scenes, but you don't really forget the which Doctor does an episode, but you can forget which companion.
I mean, I knew
happen.
it was David, obviously, that does Blink.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he was gonna write this, but he didn't. So Helen Rayner got it instead. And so yeah, as I was saying earlier, the fact that this is an episode that supposedly people didn't like, it's been a good while since I've watched Daleks in Manhattan, and as said, I don't remember how I felt about it when I first saw it. Dalek Sec in its human form didn't scare me. I remember that much. The Daleks
it's a bit
still scared
comical,
me.
isn't it?
But that's the thing; it plays up to the comical side of the almost comical side of the pig slaves, because they do look a bit funny. They do run a bit funny. You don't, unless you're probably a really young kid, you probably wouldn't find them all that scary. Maybe that's just me. But like, there was that inherent pig stuff and weird looking Dalek bro that it did, for some people, it detracted from.
Yeah, it kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think similar to how things are nowadays, we might look back at what's happened in the most recent series and think, why do we get so up in arms about that? Because nothing came of it. It's the same with Dalek Sec, because I remember it being the case of like, why have they made him human? What the hell? Is this what we're going to get from here on out? It's like the Paradigm Daleks. People were like, don't like
Are they the ones that I call Power Rangers?
The Power Ranger Daleks. Yeah. Like, is this what we're getting going forward? And I think that was, now obviously with how things went in this episode, that was definitely not the plan with Dalek Sec. The Paradigm Daleks, which we'll get to in series 5, that's a little bit different. But Dalek Sec was never meant to stick going forward. So with people getting all up in arms about it, it's like, looking back at it, watching it again, there are a lot of things about this episode I do really like. But as you were saying,
yeah, I can sort of see where you're coming from, because obviously at the time of watching it, we had no idea what the future of Doctor Who was going to be. Obviously, watching it now, we have hindsight and we know exactly what the future of Doctor Who evolves into. So I can understand why people were very like, oh, what the hell are you doing to the Daleks? Like, how dare you kind of write this? But I think it's a really, really interesting exploration of the Dalek race, because you've got literally like the 4 most intelligent Daleks, as they're, I don't know, meant to be, who escaped the Time War via emergency temporal shift, or whatever it was they called it. And it's like I said to you, when they're talking to, what was the guy's name? I literally, Dragal or Darrigal or whatever his name was.
Diagoras,
that's the one, I'm sorry.
Diagonally.
Diagonally. I'm bad at remembering names. When Diagoras, is that what you just said? Lol.
Yes.
When Diagoras gets into the conversation with whichever Dalek it is that's speaking to him, and they get out the lift, and the Dalek says, he says, don't worry, it'll be done in time. And the Dalek says, Daleks have no concept of worry. And I was saying to you that I think it's very, very interesting concept to try and write a Dalek, because emotions are so complex for humans. Like, there's literally no way you can ever know the true full extent of your emotions. You could, like, there's such a spectrum of what we feel that to pinpoint that a Dalek doesn't have worry is actually almost impossible to make a reality, because you said the Daleks only fear 2 things, which was failure and the Doctor. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
But the concept of fear obviously plays into the fact that to be fearful of something, you have to have the emotional intelligence to understand that that fear comes from a place of concern, and concern equals worry. So the fact that they can experience fear in some respect means that they obviously do have a concept of worry. So it's very hard to sort of pinpoint the fact that the Daleks don't experience any emotions, because they clearly do. I mean, you saw that when the prime example of this is when Dalek first emerges out of his transformation and he stands up, all of the Daleks back away from him like a foot or two. And that is clearly an element of shock, which is, again, like another emotion that Daleks claim they don't have, because they're purely bred with just hatred, and they don't have fear, they don't have this, they don't have that, all sorts of... So I can understand why this is a really, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not extreme, but why this is a really exciting concept to explore with the Daleks, because you've got this mergence of Dalek versus human in the same body and sharing the same mind space. And is it I think it's Dalek Sec that says something about the human race have so much, he says something like passion and ambition and war and hatred and stuff like that, or something like that.
He thinks humanity is there for war, basically.
Which is when he first emerges, but you see that ideal scenario downplay very, very quickly in his like progress throughout the episode, when he realizes then that actually war and hatred is not the primary sort of feeling of the human race. And as he says to them, when he's like on the stage in handcuffs, he says, if you search for death and destruction will find you and whatever. And I think him as a character and this idea of like the human and the Dalek emergence really, really works as a concept, because it really nails down the fact that Daleks not having emotions is a completely negative, it puts them on the back foot, basically. Like he said, you will always lose. Did he say something like that? You'll always lose because you don't have emotion, or something like that. Which I think is true, because humans really have this ability to process their emotions. And you get like some humans that genuinely are hell-bent on God knows whatever. But to have purely no emotion whatsoever, I think really, really does put the Daleks on a back foot, because all they can see is murder and hatred. And they are like probably the most dangerous killing machines in the universe, but I think it's really interesting. I think because I don't know where the concept came from. Maybe her and Russell came up with it together, or maybe it was purely her concept on her own. I don't know. But whoever came up with the concept of exploring what would happen to a Dalek if they had emotions, I mean, I think that's been explored in different ways throughout Doctor Who. I think there's one point when a Dalek develops emotions or something, and they say something
Dalek.
Like... Yeah, that is Dalek, isn't it? Yeah. And obviously it's been touched upon about how they can evolve and learn and stuff, but then you get the Dalek sort of coming back at him in this one with the two Daleks bitching in the sewer. I adored that bit, that scene where they both like spin around to look if anyone's listening, and then they're like, affirmative. It's like made me really laugh. It's like, water cooler gossip in the office, is it?
Around the Dalek juice.
But you get that really interesting concept of how they pretend to be obeying him, and how they then sort of come back fighting against him. And I just think it's really interesting. I personally don't dislike this episode. I think there are some elements of it that maybe could be slightly different, like the pig slaves and bits and pieces.
I think it literally is just the production, the way it's presented. Tallulah as a character, she's very
irritating.
She's very exaggerated. And I can't ever see this episode without thinking of this one guy I used to go to school with who would just constantly say, "What do you mean creatures?" all the time. And it's just like
quoting the episode?
Quoting the episode, yeah. And it would just get to that point in that episode. I'm like, oh no, here it comes. Yeah, Hello, mate. Yeah, I remember you from school. That's the one line
Great.
from Doctor Who you only ever quoted. Cool, bro. Thanks. But yes, you've got him. You got her. I should say. You've got Laszlo, who is. It's not. I'd argue that Laszlo is less comedic than the actual full-on pig slaves. But then you've got the pig slaves, and then you've got Dalek Sec. But yeah, conceptually, it's a really interesting position to be in because, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Dalek. Internal Dalek turmoil, Dalek civil wars, and it's like this could have gone if it weren't to be implied that these were the last 4 Daleks in existence. Of course, we know they're not.
Yeah.
Never are.
But then are they not
this could
because
have
Dalek
gone-
Khan goes off, or are they not because they're just not?
They're not because they're just not.
Right, yeah, because it's Daleks, isn't it?
Because it's Daleks, yeah, exactly. We thought all the Daleks died at the end of Flux, but no, they didn't. So. Yeah, it could have gone that Dalek Sec became this ruler, and like one of these Daleks went, actually, do you know what? I'm going to stick with him. I think he's right. I go off with him, and then the other two would go off, and we get the re-emergence of a Dalek Civil War. Basically, I really want another Dalek Civil War.
I can tell.
Because Revolution of the Daleks was almost kind of a Dalek Civil War, but it didn't really break out.
Let's hope that Russell does us a service and creates a Dalek Civil
Russell,
War.
if you're listening, you know I love
Russell,
you already.
my man, my boy.
Can you bring Davros back with his own fleet of white and gold Daleks?
Isn't Davros gone?
Yeah, Davros is never gone, is he? Same as the Daleks, Davros is never gone. You'd assume that he got out from the end of Stolen Earth and Journey's End, but alas, you thought he wouldn't get out. Sorry, but alas, he got out anyway.
Yeah.
But instead, we have that inner Dalek turmoil, and it's really interesting to see Dalek Sec's character change. Obviously, looking back at it, like it seems completely obvious that it would be the case. Maybe when we watched it for the first time, that maybe it wouldn't be, but it just seems because obviously because Dalek Sec mentions emotion like immediately as soon as he emerges from the casing as human-Dalek Sec, he immediately mentions emotion. He only mentions it in a negative aspect in terms of war and stuff, but he still mentions emotion. And the thing I find interesting, which we'll get to the Doctor in a minute, is the fact that the Doctor reacts purely to a Dalek. He is still, as far as he is aware, looking at a Dalek, but we'll get to him in a minute. But as you say, the other Daleks start questioning, and the Daleks say, we're bred to receive orders. We receive Dalek Sec says jump, and we ask how high. That's how Daleks.
No, they don't ask how high because they don't ask questions. They just jump.
They just jump. They jump until Dalek Sec tells them to stop.
Hopping Daleks just around the building.
But I really do enjoy, and like watching back at this, just how much they just show the other Daleks looking at each other. And it's amazing how when Dalek Sec has first emerged and the Doctor's talking to him about emotion, and he's saying, like, because he starts saying about emotion, about how it's all negative and war and blah, and the Doctor's like, no, you can't be like that, and then he goes on another bit of a tangent, and it starts to sound a little bit lighter, not massively, but a little bit, and then it's amazing how these two Daleks just can turn their heads and look at each other, and you know exactly what they're thinking. Like, it's almost as if they're actually emitting emotion. They're both looking at each other like, the hell's this guy on?
Yeah.
Like, what is this guy talking about? And I love that they keep pushing into that. And that's what makes Dalek so interesting, especially in the modern era. As you say, it's hard to have a Dalek be completely emotionless because they do have a lot of emotion. They have a lot of hate. That is what, that is the layman's term for a Dalek. It's a bubbling lump of hate inside a metal casing. But there's also, there's passion for what they do. There is loyalty to who they are. There's so much more than that. And of course, yes, there is fear, and with fear comes worry. But I think they're so hardwired that anyone says it's not human, don't worry, Daleks are not allowed, Daleks are not human, Daleks do not worry. It's just it's hardwired. And I think that really blunt language is obviously what makes the Daleks so popular. And also, just to skip forward a good 14 years, to series 13 with how the Sontarans were brought back and how they were so blunt and dark in their dialogue, and it made them so good. And yet the most recent Dalek story, the most recent episode of Doctor Who, some of the Dalek dialogue felt a bit strange and a bit more not so much human, but just not Dalek, and it was
Not
just
very
a bit
well
weird.
written is the word you're looking for there.
It's a
Well,
dialogue issue.
This is kind of what I was going to say, because during this episode, there was one point when I was sat there thinking, this dialogue is incredible. Like, I was sat there listening to the Doctor speaking to the Daleks and Dalek Sec and having this conversation about feelings and emotion. And I was thinking, this sounds exactly like the kind of conversation you would expect to hear. Like, it sounds very on point, very, like, key points to the point, but also very natural. And I was thinking it takes real skill to write the way, what did you say her name was?
Helen Rayner. Yeah.
Helen Rayner. It takes real skill to write the way that she's written this episode, because it just flows so naturally, and all the things that Dalek Sec talks about and kind of discovers as he's becoming more human is just so, like, poignant. And I genuinely sat there and I was like, God, we haven't seen writing in Doctor Who like this for a bloody long time. And
and also the fact that just everyone's moving around. The Doctor's there explaining stuff and doing stuff, but they're moving. He's moving.
And also,
and that's what we don't have anymore.
What real peril can feel like, because when the Doctor's at the top of the Empire State Building, like, trying to get the things off, and they're trying to figure out a way to defeat the pigmen coming up in the lift, you genuinely feel that sense of foreboding, like, are they actually going to get out of this? Like, how are they going to manage this and survive this? And when the Doctor drops his Sonic, you're like, oh my God, how on earth is he going to manage this? And it really felt like the time was ticking, which, again, is something we haven't really experienced in Doctor Who for a while, is a sense of real peril. And it felt like I was actually, although I knew the outcome of this episode, I've watched it, I mean,
even if you hadn't seen this episode before, it's you know that they're gonna
obviously they're gonna
do
survive,
it somehow. Yeah,
but it really does kind of make you wonder who's gonna survive and how they're gonna do it. And yeah, it's props to Helen Rayner for writing this episode, because I think she did it magnificently. And yeah, okay, there's always bits of dialogue here and there that are a little bit patchy. But I think she nailed the characters as well, because obviously Russell would have had overarching input on the Doctor and how he would kind of respond to things and so on and so forth. Yeah. But to be able to write a character like Solomon, and to be able to write a character like Frank and Laszlo, and just like genuine sort of people that you actually believe would exist, is quite hard. Yeah, exactly. Like, I actually give a damn about these people.
It's sad knowing that Solomon dies. Like, that whole speech and that immediate exterminate response, and that the way that he dies, like staring into the eyes of a Dalek, and how his scream, it's harrowing. Like, again, you know me, I love my stories that don't need to put in 5 million Daleks to make them feel scary. If they can do it with 4, or in this case 2, then, all the better for it. And yeah, Tallulah, like I said, Tallulah is a sometimes irritating character. She's not the kind of character that you groan at every time she comes up on screen, but she's more of a caricature, and she has been overplayed, but that is part of her character, and it's not so infuriating that it just doesn't work.
I think she's not overused. That's the key point, because she's not in this for a good chunk of the two-parter. Like, there's a huge portion where she's just not relevant. Excuse me. Where she's just not relevant. And I think that's why you don't get so aggravated with her all the time, because, yeah, okay, she's this huge New York kind of like caricature and whatever, but to be fair, that's how a lot of accents were back in the 30s. There were, and she was clearly I want to say not flapper girl, but they have just come out of the 20s, so that kind of era we're talking about. And it was a point when women were allowed to be much more sort of explorative with what they wore and how they dressed and their makeup choices and how they presented themselves. And so I think she is a slight over-exaggeration of that what's the word I'm looking for? Of that persona. That's the word I'm looking for. I don't know why I said response. That was a bit of a weird brain fart. She's obviously a caricature of that kind of persona, but I think it's just to kind of, in a way, just kind of pinpoint the era that they're in, because the only other people that we really hear with that accent is whatever his name is, diagonally, I'm just going to call him.
Diagonous.
That's the one. He's the
And
only
then you've
other
got
one.
Frank from Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a mishmash of accents here, there, and everywhere. And so, yeah, she's not fully irritating. That I wish the episode didn't have her in it. And I think she's also meant to be there as kind of the catalyst for the audience in a way, because obviously, ordinarily, the Doctor has to have someone to explain things to, and in this episode, him and Martha are actually separated quite a lot, so you don't really get that him explaining things to the companion. In this, I feel like Martha's quite headstrong and actually fends for herself an awful lot of the time, because she has to, but she works out that they're Daleks by herself, obviously because the Doctor in the last episode has told her all about who the Daleks are, so she hears the name, understands what kind of thing they're facing, whereas I think Tallulah, with 3 L's and an H, is meant to be the sort of the primary resource for asking all the questions. And she's just meant to be a bit funny and a bit thick, because in this instance, I suppose she just is that kind of... I mean, she says, "You're the smartest guy I ever dated." It's kind of, I feel like that's not a high bar, love.
Yeah, that's yeah. I always feel like that's just her saying, "I've dated a lot of guys."
Yeah, basically.
And speaking of dating, we have another scene that I forgot about in the building in the second part, where Martha's like, "Oh, the Doctor can't see me," and it's like, "Yep, okay, whatever."
We know.
Moving on from that, but then I'd never clocked that when Tallulah's like, "Oh, you got that sharp man in a suit. Oh, very, very nice." And she's like, "Oh, no, we're not together." And she goes, "Oh, he likes musical theatre." And it's like, and there's the archaic stereotype of a gay man.
Yeah.
Let's go. Why do you think so many people thought I was gay at university? Dance and theatre,
likes
baby.
Musical theatre.
Dance and theatre.
To be fair, back in the 30s, like, you can kind of expect that would be how they expressed.
That was how it was.
Because obviously being gay was not ideal for a lot of history. I can't comment on LGBT history because I really don't know it that well. But we probably know that back in 1930s, you didn't really out loud be like, "I'm gay."
Yeah, didn't get very far, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's like when Solomon was giving the whole speech about how we need to take a palm, and you were like, "Where are all the women?" It's like, well, they're in Hooverville. They just won't be the ones being given the guns. It'll be basically as simple as that. Like, even an episode written by a woman, they've written, she's written in the main non-companion female character. Still a strong character. She's full of love for Laszlo, irrelevant of who he is. Like, she hasn't turned around and gone, "Oh God," runs away, and Laszlo gets all sad. Like, she is a strong character. She's
a product of the time.
It's a product of the time and a different approach to a strong character, but also, it's that feeling that we're getting, this era represented as it was.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's a historical...
Apart from the Daleks flying through Central Park, but close enough.
If you're talking about an era of history, then you need to be true to that era of history, because that's how things probably were. And like you said, they'd just come out of World War One, so the men were the fighters. Even in World War Two, the men were the fighters. Like, that didn't really change until the suffragettes and all that kind of stuff. But again, I don't know barely anything about history, so
that's what works with Doctor Who. The idea that you can take a time in history, if you represent it in terms of setting the scene and do it convincingly, if you're then going to fill it with bug-eyed monsters, at least the fact that the contextual surroundings feel correct, people will go with it.
I mean, it's
if you appeared in a New York that wasn't New York, that just didn't seem right, because there's just something that doesn't sit well, even though this is supposed to represent the 1930 that we from history know, it's not going to land.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. But again, that's the beauty of how they contextualize it off screen.
Yeah.
And then go, let's focus on the story now. So
it's like how they despite the fact that Solomon is a man of colour, they put him as the leader of the Hooverville area, and he very explicitly says to the Doctor, like, it doesn't matter who you are, what your like background is or anything like that, like, we will take you here. And I feel like that's very kind of poignant to proving that, you know, once again, Doctor Who really does know its stuff and touches on things that it needs to touch upon, but does it well.
And at the end of the day, if those exact words were broadcast today, you'd have all these people up in arms about it being too woke and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Anyway, speaking back to Dalek Sec, something I noticed during this episode is that when the whole plan is revealed and Dalek Sec is like, "Yo, we get the Doctor to help us to help our plan actually happen," and the Daleks are all doing the whole looks at each other, that's
gives each other the side eye.
Yeah, a bit side eye stalk. And when the Doctor says, "Oh, when's this solar flare coming in?" Dalek Sec says 11 minutes, and I'm convinced after hearing the term later on that was a deliberate wording choice, dialogue choice for Dalek Sec to say, because that is even more of the human side of his brain, seeping into his mannerisms, his dialogue and stuff, because normally Daleks use their own standard of time, which is rels. They've been using it since ever, and rels are basically seconds. They're exactly the same. But if Dalek Sec were more Dalek, then maybe they would have said it's coming. The solar flare is in 660 rels, not 11 minutes. But then later on in the episode, the 3 remaining Cult of Skaro, quote unquote, pure Daleks say this happening in 10 rels.
40
so it's
rels,
like
yeah.
40 rels, whatever. It's like, but the fact that there was that conscious decision to have Dalek Sec say minutes instead of rels is like, there's another thing that if you were watching this for the first time, it proves that this, as much as obviously all the whole, don't kill the Doctor, don't do this, don't do that, and all the Daleks are like, bitch, what? That already tells you that he's different, but also maybe that's just, it further reaffirms it, probably subconsciously. If you know the Daleks enough to know or have heard rels as their unit of time before, that's just something a little bit different. And then regarding Dalek Sec and the Doctor, or regarding Daleks and the Doctor, I forgot just how angry Tennant gets in this about the Daleks still being here, because obviously after the events of Doomsday, he's convinced all the Daleks got sucked back into the void. We obviously saw Dalek Sec emergency temporal shift in Doomsday. We didn't see the other 3 do that, and nor did the Doctor. So he would just obviously assume that all the Cult of Skaro got pulled into the void and jobs are good and that's it. And when he gets all pissy at them being alive again, it feels, again, similar to how it's been in the past and similar to how it was with Eccleston. It feels so genuine seeing him get angry. And when it comes to the point in part 2 when the Daleks have just shot down Solomon and the Doctor is there saying, kill me, do this. Like, you might think, he knows it's not going to happen because he knows the Dalek Sec's going to stop them, because he can see the fact that he's the human side of Dalek Sec is ticking over. But he doesn't know.
No.
He is genuinely, like, unlike at the end when he gets the Dalek humans to shoot him, he knows at that point. When the Daleks are up in the sky over Hooverville, he is convinced he's going to die. Like, that is one of those points where you could genuinely think this is him fully accepting that this is his fate.
Yeah.
To save a bunch of random people that he doesn't know from death by Dalek, because he doesn't want any more people to die from the gun stick of the Dalek.
I think it's very much the raw emotion that he has from, obviously, the brain.
Time War?
No.
Oh.
What were you just talking about? When they get pulled into the void and that?
Doomsday.
Canary Wharf.
Battle
of Canary Wharf. That's the one I was trying to think of. I think it's genuinely the raw emotion from the Battle of Canary Wharf, because he quite literally hasn't seen the Daleks since that point.
No.
Yeah. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So it just obviously brings right to the surface all of that regret and emotion and just pure sort of awful memory and feeling that he has associated with losing Rose. And so you can obviously understand why he would be so angry in the fact that he had to lose Rose, but what was it all for if they survived anyway? Like, what was the entire thing and emotion that he went through losing the one he loved for four of them to escape? And I think that's why in this episode Russell touches upon the whole sequence with Martha and Tallulah where they're discussing it in the Empire State Building, and she says, like, I feel like he doesn't even think I'm here or whatever. And you can sort of see it in this episode because I mean, quite literally, he's dealing with the monsters that made him lose, like, probably the love of his life, etc., etc. And you just, Martha, get a grip, man. Like,
it is a bit. It's
this
very
is
much
getting.
that.
This is the point in this series where I start losing sympathy for Martha's situation. Not that I ever really had sympathy for Martha's situation, but at the beginning I can kind of understand. But now I'm like, Russell, man, cool, we get it. Like, she likes him, he doesn't like her back. Deal with it.
The way that it's been framed with Martha, I don't ever think at any point we, the audience, were supposed to feel for Martha not being seen. Maybe for the people who mega simp over the Doctor, that would supposedly feel heartbroken when people know that that's not going to happen. I mean, like, yesterday, I think it was, Lando Norris was trending on Twitter for some reason. We were like, why? If in case you didn't know, Lando Norris is an F1 driver. It's like, why is he trending on Twitter? And you click through and you realise, oh, he's posted a picture of himself with his now girlfriend on Instagram.
Oh, so everybody's like, oh, I can't believe he's got a girlfriend.
That thought that they could be with Lando Norris. I'm getting all pissy about it. It's like, yes, because you had a shot. Like,
obviously.
No.
It infuriates me.
Yeah, I know. It's the same kind of feeling. I don't think at all that Russell was ever intending for us to really, like, properly feel for Martha's inability to hit that.
No, I think
whereas we were very much supposed to feel very, very sad about Rose and the Doctor being split up. Like, it's not the same thing. It is definitely a deliberate character decision.
Mm-hmm. No, I think he's definitely more exploring the motions of her thought process and her emotional processing going through each of the episodes that leads her up to where she gets to at the end of the series, because it's obviously she's going through. I mean, when you got a mega crush on somebody, and that's all it is, she's got a mega crush, because let's be honest, she doesn't bloody love him. You've only known him for probably about 5 days at this point collectively. You probably don't love him, do you? Oh, he's a bit fit, and he saved your life a few times.
He's a bit fit.
He's a lot fit.
He's a lot fit.
He's grammar. He very beautiful, okay?
He very sex, yes.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And in a suit. But anyway.
Boy.
Yeah, so she's obviously in a bit of lust for him. She's very like, oh, he's so amazing and he saved my life like 4 or 5 times by now. Like, you just can't get over a man like that. It's, can you? Really? Like, this is why I'm sort of like, Martha, shut up. You don't love him. Get over yourself. Stop being a little bitch. If I was there in person, I'd be slapping her, going, Martha, wake up, you stupid little, wake up. You don't love him. Shut up.
And then as soon as you convinced her that she's not in love with him, she goes, no, I'm not. Okay, I'll stop. And then you go, this is my time to strike.
But the thing is, I'm aware I don't love him. Just want to bang.
You just... And
that's fine.
On that note, let's go to Twitter, because I got a lot of questions from you lovely people, you lovely Kasterpodians over on Twitter, at Kasterpod.
And
if I remember... What?
Kasterparents.
Ah, it's so cute. I think was that Was it Richard? I think the guy's name was.
I don't know. Somebody called us Kasterparents on Twitter.
I
and
think
it was
Richard.
adorable.
If I've remembered your name, it's not hard to forget since my name is also Richard. But I think it was Richard anyway. Let's go clicking through. But yes, Kasterparents, which is cute. You lovely little Kasterpodians. Yeah, you sent us through some questions on Twitter because if I remember to put a tweet out before we record this, then I get loads of questions in from you guys. I know it's good, isn't it? So I'm just honestly, I've got no order for these because we leave these till the end. As much as there are probably some of these that could have fit quite nicely in the sort of order of things we've spoken about. If I edited these podcasts, I could put them in the right order, but I don't edit them because you get Amy and I completely raw, bite the pillow. What can I say, Adam? Adam asks whether we could see another human and Dalek crossover in the future. He remembers watching this as a 9-year-old and having his mind blown by the idea of a human Dalek. The closest thing we've had to human Dalek hybrids was in the with Series 7, Asylum of the Daleks, when it was so weird when people had that eye stalk popping out of their forehead, and it was like, all right, Moff, whatever.
Moffat was starting to get a little bit
it was Asylum of the Daleks.
It
wasn't good, unfortunately.
I would say no, mainly because it's been explored in this manner. At least there wouldn't be a kind of hybrid crossover like this. There might be the opportunity to explore kind of what happens a little bit more. Like, I mean, obviously we have Davros, who is is he like a human Dalek?
No.
Was he human? What
No.
was he?
He was. I think he's technically a Khaled. Khaled.
What's that?
Right, I'm gonna need to.
I mean, obviously it says Dalek backwards, but like
I'm gonna have to sit you down and make you watch Genesis of the Daleks. I just assumed I had at this point in time. Khaled was the race that became the Daleks during the Khaled and Thal War. Remember the Thals?
No.
The Thals, the people that the Daleks were at war with, or the Khaleds were at war with, and the Dalek war machine came of the Dalek and the Khaled and Thal War. Genesis of the Daleks. It's arguably one of the greatest Doctor Who story of all time.
Okay.
I didn't realise you haven't seen it.
No.
Well,
sorry.
Okay, we're going to sit down and watch that then.
You know, I've not watched barely any classic Who.
Apart from lots of remembrance of the Daleks. Which, speaking of which, I've got something I will talk about in a minute regarding that.
Okay.
I've just remembered a thing I wanted to talk about. So it's kind of been explored before, the idea of a human Dalek thing, but it's been done. Like this is literally the most explicit way of doing it, and I don't think they could do it again.
I was gonna say,
are Daleks done using humans for whatever dastardly deeds they have planned? No, they're always going to be humans present because humans make the TV show. Mm-hmm. So there's always going to be
I don't think there will be a crossover in this kind of extent. Again,
it's been explored.
It's been done. Yeah,
it's been that approach of human emotion plus Dalek equals, disagreements basically. So
what was your point?
It's very much been done.
What were you
it's been done.
About?
I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
Oh,
what was your point?
Before we get on to the next question, very quickly, when the Daleks have been killed, or at least Dalek Thay and Jast have been killed, along with Dalek Sek, and the human Dalek hybridy people have been exterminated. Really want one of those Dalek Tommy guns. Why can't I have a Dalek Tommy gun? Those are wicked. When the Doctor's back in the laboratory and talking to Dalek Khan, I never spotted this, but the way the Doctor talked, and I don't know again on Helen Rayner's part whether this was a conscious decision, how much it mirrors the end of Remembrance of the Daleks, when right at the end of it, there's only the Renegade Supreme Dalek left. The Doctor thinks the Daleks are done-ski. Mm-hmm. Skaro's been destroyed thanks to the Hand of Omega. The Renegade Daleks have been blown to smithereens by the Special Weapons Dalek and the Imperial forces. There's just the Supreme who chickens out, runs off, and then the Doctor finds him in an alleyway, and the Doctor's there saying to him, Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, saying, "You're the last one left. There's no one else. There's no there's no home. There's no planet. Your planet is a burnt cinder circling a dead sun." Mm-hmm. And the Dalek just goes mad. Like, it fully just breaks down, spins around, and explodes. And I wonder whether the way that the Doctor was talking to Dalek Khan at the end of this was meant to mirror that kind of thing, where he thinks, "You're the last one. Like, you are the last one." It's a different approach to how 9 wanted to kill the quote-unquote last Dalek in Dalek with a big-ass gun. And then the 10th Doctor instead is like,
using
you've lost.
psychology.
It's over. It's a psychological attack, basically. And expected the Dalek to freak out. And, you know, they got whoever was inside it, Barnaby Edwards or whatever, to shake, to make the casing rattle. And then he goes, temporal shift, and just pisses off somewhere. I feel like the Doctor was trying to make history repeat itself with the supposed last one.
You never know. Maybe Helen was a huge fan of Classic Who. Maybe
Mate, if I ever write an episode of Doctor Who, I'm putting in so many references to Remembrance of the Daleks as real. I know if I have a chance to write a Doctor
just
episode,
going to rewrite the thing.
I know exactly what I would do for an episode of Doctor Who if I had the chance. I'm not.
Most people who are mega Doctor Who fans know what they would do for an episode.
I know what I would do. How I'd flesh it out and make it work as an actual episode, I do not know, but that's something to work.
That's why
that's something that all of you lovely Kasterpodians will see when I'm the showrunner after Russell T Davies too. Leon,
you'll have to fight off Dan Hardcastle for that role.
Yeah. Okay. Me and Dan will go in together.
Sounds good.
I'll tell you what, we're gonna host a special episode of Escaping Kasterborous featuring Dan. In case you
oh my god, can we?
Nerd Cubed, a content creator that Amy and I just absolutely love.
That would be incredible.
I've watched Nerd Cube for years, and Amy's watched him a lot as well. And we're just
might just reach out to him or Rebecca on Twitter.
If you're listening. Dan and Rebecca, do you want to come and do a joint episode of EK?
Can we just talk about... Pick your favourite episode from New Who and we'll talk about it. We'll just jump straight to it. Don't even care.
Do you want to come and have a bitch fest about Chibnall? We can do that too.
No, because that will make him really angry. And we don't want to hear Dan when he gets angry. We will have to bleep out 90% of the episode.
I'll actually have to... Either that or I can, when I upload it to anchor.fm, I can just say, yes, it's an explicit episode. Watch
you
out,
would
kids.
have to. Because you've not heard the things that he says about Chibnall in his podcast. He quite literally rips into him, and I mean not in a good way. I just can't explain it. If you've ever listened to any of Dan's Doctor Who podcasts, you would know. But he hates the guy with a passion. So
yeah,
probably won't
Kasterpodians
talk
unite.
about Chibnall.
Help us get Nerd
Everybody
Cubed
tweet
on a podcast with us.
Dan Nerd Cubed on Twitter and be like, "Hey, there's a great
I don't want to harass
Doctor Who
him, but I'd
podcast."
love to do some Doctor Who content with him. Anyway, Leon has asked whether if we could rewrite the Army of the Dalek Time Lord humans, how would you make them more interesting?
The Army of Dalek Time. Oh, the ones with the guns.
The ones
and
right at
stuff.
the end. The ones with the Tommy guns.
How would I make them more interesting? Give them funny voices. I'd make them sound like Daleks. But that wouldn't really work because they're still.
But that again, we've got face penises and pig people. I think that's not going to help the episode in the long Term when the Dalek says exterminate and he goes, why?
Why?
I got that creamy peanut butter.
Creamy peanut butter. Anyway, that's such a weird tangent. If no one's seen that video, they're going to be so weird.
I know. I would honestly say that I don't know how you would make them more interesting because I would argue they're already quite interesting, which is about as interesting as they would get because the concept of Dalek humans has already been explored. It's the same kind of deal here. They're just people that want to kill and given orders, but then they'll turn around and go, why? I feel like they were done enough. And I think if they added in the same way, if they left a human Dalek in play and then they left human Time Lord Daleks in play, things would just get real messy real quick. It's the beauty, it's the blessing and the curse of a Dalek story is 9 times out of 10 it ends with either no Daleks left supposedly or just the Daleks left when they all escape and run off somewhere like they do at the end of Revelation of the Daleks. They just go, yeah, okay, and they just go.
There's not really a lot you can do to change them because they are basically, like the Doctor says, they're just shells of humans that are basically just waiting to be reinvigorated with a new genetic code and a new electromagnetic pulse to set the brain and heart going again. So really they are zombie human Time Lord Dalek things, and to be honest I think they're played out exactly how they should be because they talk slowly like a Dalek does. If you notice in the first bit.
Oh yeah. They still have that aura and that sort of blank deadness in.
But I feel like that's almost necessary to make them the new army, because that's all they would ever be. It's just this
They
subservient
would, yeah, they
human
wouldn't go
race.
any further than where they go, which is out of the basement into the theater and then onto the floor dead. That's all they needed to do, really.
Yeah.
Jay has asked what our opinion is on the human Dalek, which I guess we've already covered, and would we like to see more hybrid villains in the future? Now, bear in mind, the last hybrid villain we had were the Cyberlords.
Yeah, I was going to say it was Roger Lloyd Pack in...
No, the Cyberlords.
Cyberlords.
The Timeless Children.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were referring to the last one we watched, not the last piece of crap.
No, I mean, just in general, who?
Let's...
Yeah.
No.
It's They can be conceptually interesting, but only if they're done right. And now when I hear the hybrid, I just think of the whole hybrid thing from Series 9, which was dreadful. Which
hybrid
just
thing
felt,
from Series 9.
The hybrid, the Time Lord / Dalek thing, and it turns out the hybrid was the Doctor. It was.
What are you chatting? What are you chatting?
With 12th Doctor. Sorry, 12th. Yeah, 12th Doctor.
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi, Clara, and me, the hybrid. The fact that you don't remember goes to show how rubbish that whole. It was a whole arc in Series 9.
Wait,
and it made no.
You're talking about
Ashilda.
Maisie Williams' character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing made no flipping sense.
Wait, so was me supposed to be the hybrid?
No, I think the hybrid was meant to be like the Doctor and companion, or the Doctor and Clara, like specifically.
Not being funny.
It was another classic. Let's plant some massive relevance to the current TARDIS team and plonk it through the series.
Basically, when Stephen Moffat started going off piste a little bit.
Russell did it first. Just saying.
Oh yeah. What? As in Russell went off piste first, or Russell
did a pretty
first?
wanky series long arc about the TARDIS team.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Russell's perfect by any stretch.
No,
this is why I think all of the writers get to their end eventually, or showrunners, should I say, because they all go a little bit off the rails. But I have basically erased 90% of Capaldi's episodes from my brain.
I'm honestly looking forward to getting back to them, because
probably about 30% of Matt Smith's episodes from my brain.
Capaldi is one of the best Doctors. So not at me, bro.
From pretty much Capaldi onwards, I remember naff all about Doctor Who, and that includes Jodie Whittaker's era that we've basically just lived through in the last 2 or 3 years. Like, if you told me an episode that wasn't horrendously awful, I probably don't remember it. And that's a lot of them, I guaranteed. But I basically only I don't even remember some episodes from the series just gone. Like, come on.
No. But yeah, hybrid villains, they could be interesting, but off the top of my head, I couldn't think of any that I would overtly like to see. Cybermen plus Daleks, we've already had all that sort of vibe in Doomsday, and the dialogue is obviously hilarious, and it would just never happen.
If we get any more Time Lord mashups with anything, I'm gonna shoot him. Not Russell, Chibnall.
Yeah,
but
I don't think we will. I'm hoping. But we have two specials left. Let's see what happens.
There's enough time.
Matt asks whether do we think the ideas of the episode were brought down by the visuals of human-Dalek sec?
It's a good point.
As we've discussed, it's definitely a point of the episode that people point at to be like, this wasn't great. But I don't think it is so atrociously terrible that it completely negates the fascinating turmoil the Daleks go through in this episode. So I would say that no.
I don't think it does.
Yes, it is a bit strange.
Yeah.
And looking back, it's like, yeah, I can see why this didn't land with people back in 2007, but I think in the grand scheme of the narrative, no, it doesn't detract from it.
No, I think it could have been... I feel like his look, his outfit, his makeup, his costume, whatever you want to call it, definitely could have been toned down to be a bit more human with Dalek elements, rather than just basically a head crab. looking deal because he basically just literally looks like the Dalek has his head off and stuck his head in place of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other bit that you actually see of this dude is his hands, and they're just a little bit crusty. So I feel like you probably could have just been a little bit more like the skin texture changed. Maybe you had a tentacle here or there, but his tentacles could have been coming from like his back or elsewhere to make it a little bit more like...
I am a Triceratops.
I'm a Stegosaurus.
With penis on my back.
I feel like we didn't really need the singular eye thing to sort of represent the fact that he was a Dalek. Like, we probably could have just had two eyes and understood that, because I feel like that part of the makeup was maybe a little bit weird, and that the brain was so prominent as well, because
it was just taking the design beats from the modern era Dalek.
But
so
yeah,
I guess I think in the grand scheme of things, no, it didn't make all that much of a difference. Megan has asked whether we think Laszlo and Tallulah managed to stay together after the events of the episode, or whether he left like he intended to spare her from being seen with him.
No, I don't think so. I think at that point you're supposed to believe that the fact that he's allowed to live in Hooverville basically kind of means that she continued visiting him and they stayed a couple, because otherwise what would kind of be the point of the Doctor bringing him back to life? Exactly,
and I think the fact that at first he didn't want to see him down in the sewers was down to the fact that he looked so horrible. Mm-hmm. After that point, when he kept trying to shrug her off, I think that was because, as he knows anyways, that they don't have a very long lifespan, and obviously by the course of the end episode he's basically dying, or he is dying.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe it reached the point where he didn't want to be with her, not because she'd be repulsed by him, because it's like, you've already seen him.
Yeah.
He didn't want to let her see him die.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a theory.
Probably.
A game theory.
No.
Ben has asked about the way they portrayed Hooverville in the episode, and also whether we'd have seen more of a human Daleks. And to be honest, we've just to give a little shout out to Ben. Hi Ben, thanks for sending a question in. We've kind of covered that already.
Who's Ben? Do you know Ben?
I don't know Ben.
Oh, you're just doing a shout out.
He's taken the time to send us a tweet. But just what Ben has asked is like we basically already answered that. So hopefully, if you're listening, Ben, I'm assuming you are. I guess we've kind of answered your question.
Yeah, we've kind of answered your
question. Thank you for sending a question in all the same. Like, if we have questions that come in that we've basically already answered prior to looking at the questions, I'll give you a little shout out and say hi.
Just assume we answered it in response to your question.
Just go back and I'll just go, there you go, Ben. Then just cut back to there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Hannah has asked, if this episode were made today, which young-ish actor would replace Andrew Garfield?
Oh.
Now, you see, this is the kind of the question I just don't know.
No, I don't know.
I just don't know, because I don't honestly watch enough other TV. It's like people have asked me, who would you have as the next showrunner? Who would you have as the next Doctor? I'm like, I don't know.
Not a clue.
I have my unrealistic dreams for the Doctor that are not going to happen. But
to be
otherwise,
honest,
I don't know.
I kind of feel like Andrew Garfield's character in this doesn't really need to be replaced by anybody substantial. The fact that it was Andrew Garfield was mainly just coincidence. The fact that he went on to be sort of Spider-Man and a few other massive roles and things like that, like, it kind of...
And now apparently very good in Tick, Tick, Boom, which I still need to watch.
Yes, we need to watch
apparently he's very, very good in that.
But I feel like it wasn't really wholly relevant that it was Andrew Garfield. It just happened to be that he was cast in this, like, primarily to everything else.
Yeah.
So it probably could just be a nobody. I mean, yeah, again, I don't know actors very well. So, not a clue, unfortunately. Sorry.
Yeah. Adam has asked whether we think that New York has been overused in Doctor Who.
Ooh.
I think maybe that's probably come about because obviously we've had it New York, and then we've had New York again, and then we had New York, and then later on we got New York. So I can understand that, but I guess...
When else is it in? When else are we in New York?
Angels Take Manhattan.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I suppose, but then at the same time, like, it is one of the probably most major cities in the world.
It's one of the most famous cities in the world, and also you've got London over and over again. You've got Cardiff over and over again. It's just a location that's it's iconic enough. Like you think of Britain, you think of Big Ben and London, so they're going to use London. You think of America, you think of New York. Because Adam suggested LA or Paris, and it's like
LA's
great
not as
ideas
recognisable.
Apart from walking down the hall, the Walk of Fame, or there's an alien living inside the Hollywood sign. It's kind of down to it's just recognisable places basically. And I wouldn't say it's been overused necessarily. Like I think it's reached the point now where if they go, we're going back to New York for an episode, I'm like, cool, whatever.
I mean, yeah, I think it's because we've watched these happen in such quick succession between series. It's like you said, it's New York, then it's New York, then it's New York. But the next time we're in New York isn't it's quite a way away now. The next time we're in New York, and for that to be the only other time that we're there, I kind of feel like that's fine because it's such a big gap between now and then we haven't seen it since. Like you said, it's like we get so many episodes in London, and it's just because it's British. And I suppose for people in Britain, New York is for a lot of people, it's a dream vacation destination.
It's an exotic place.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it's been overused. It's not the sonic screwdriver. Well, hey,
it's not Chip Sonic
Zelnok
screwdriver.
has asked whether we think Dalek's sex human form would be an evolution for the Dalek race, or is it simply devolving? Dalek sex. Shut up.
I thought you said Dalek sexy human form.
I mean, are you telling me you wouldn't want to have
sorry.
one of those 6 penises inside you?
No.
Moving swiftly on.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you think that Dalek sec apostrophe S human form would be an evolution for the Dalek race, or is it devolving as he can now use technology and weapons that he couldn't have before, but he can't protect himself and doesn't have the Dalek gun stick? It's a very interesting question.
It is a very interesting question.
Because it is looking at it from both the pros and the cons. The pros are he can when he reveals one of the near death subjects to become a human Dalek, he touches his head. I kind of wish they played up on that a bit more, to be like, he can touch, he can feel, because David Tennant says to the Daleks, and bear in mind when we saw them in Evolution in Doomsday, that's the first time Tennant's Doctor interacts with the Daleks, and he mentions the whole thing about how they can't touch. Daleks can't touch, and this is a Dalek being able to touch. Like they could have really played up on that. And yes, he can use technology. He picks up the radio after the Doctor uses it to escape the laboratory, and it's like he can touch, he can feel, he can pick things up. He can do that now. He can be in a laboratory, not awkwardly having their plunger stick replaced with a big syringe. He can do stuff, but then it also means he doesn't have this big ass casing and doesn't have the Dalek gun stick to hand. So
I don't. It's kind of a difficult one to answer because clearly the Daleks think it's devolving. Which is obviously the entire point of the episode. But I don't. It's a hard question. It's a very good question. I personally would say that he probably is more of a devolution than an evolution, because
I agree with you on that one.
Obviously, like you said, they can't protect themselves, and his weaponry definitely would be nowhere near as strong. But also, Daleks have been bred to be a bit like the Sontarans, to be basically like war strategists, like evil, sort of hateful races. And I think having that human emotion really brings into play the fact that he would then question the strategies of the Dalek race. And I think that would then put him on the back foot. Like the fact that he stops the Doctor being killed countless times really means that they missed out on the opportunity to, like they say, kill their greatest enemy.
So would you say that as a Dalek, it's a devolution.
As a Dalek, it's
race,
a devolution.
It's an evolution. It's like a fish learning to walk. Basically, a Dalek can pick up and touch it. Like, it makes them so much more malleable and you know,
like you said, it
gives
makes
them
them
so
more
much more potential.
vulnerable.
Yeah, but then on the flip side, it makes them more vulnerable. Hence why they have to they have to keep using pig slaves to do their bidding. Like, there's no way in hell they wrapped up all those humans and put them in little beddies and pulled them up into the ceiling by themselves. That was all the pig slaves. Just saying. Adam has asked whether Dalek sex should have survived.
No.
Also, no.
No.
Because again, as much as Zelnok's question about whether it's an evolution or devolution, that's the kind of thing you would explore over more time, but something like Dalek sex being a human would not have been carried forward.
No.
As much as people would have been worried that this is how the Dalek's going to be from now on. Nah. It's too much of a change.
It's too much of an
upheaval.
Yeah, but it's also too much of an emotional heavyweight to be able to actually explore it consistently across episodes.
And also logistically, Dalek prop versus lots and lots of makeup.
Yeah.
Which one's easier? The Dalek prop.
And also, in terms of actual Dalek functionality, he can't teleport. He can't shoot a gun. He can't expand. You know, he can't do... There's so many things that he cannot do that is imperative to the Daleks succeeding that we see time and time again. He can't fly upstairs. He can't, come to outer floors of a building and shoot through the window. There's so many things that he wouldn't be able to do that the Daleks rely upon to be the sort of best killer war machines of the universe. So I would argue he definitely should have died, because it gives Helen time to explore this character over a double episode, which she does very well, and you get to see that evolution take place and sort of the development of emotions and all that kind of stuff that we've talked about. But yeah, it just wouldn't have worked going forwards, because what would they have done with him? They'd have probably made him a slave, and that would have been it. It wouldn't have... Just wouldn't have worked, really.
No. But there was already an interesting story there, so I don't feel like they could have... I don't clamour for more of Dalek Sec as much as we've discussed already. There could have been avenues they could have gone down with Dalek Sec moving forward, and how he opposes the Daleks as we know and love them. So... But yeah, it didn't necessarily need to survive. And then Liam finally asks about whether you find it kind of interesting that Andrew Garfield got one of his earlier acting roles in Doctor Who and has gone on to be Spider-Man and doing stuff in Tick Tick Boom and get nominated for an Oscar in The Social Network and so on. I wouldn't say it's necessarily weird. It happens.
I mean, a lot of actors...
People work their way up.
A lot of actors are in Doctor Who that you look at and you go, oh, that's that person.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you watch something like... Rogue One or The Theory of Everything, and you go and watch Unicorn and the Wasp in Series 4. Oh look, it's Felicity Jones. You know, it happens.
It happens.
You find actors that go on to do mega things. I mean, Karen Gillan was cast as Amy Pond, and no one knew her, and now she's Nebula in the MCU.
Yeah.
It's it happens. It happens, and Andrew Garfield's character in this, Frank, he's great. He's a lovable character, and it's Andrew Garfield, so. Hell yeah. That's the simping. That's where the simping is going to wrap up today, I think. So,
have we got any more questions? That was a lot of questions.
That was a lot of quesquestions, but no, that's all the questions. So thank you for all the questions. And if you do have any more questions regarding next time's episode, which is the Lazarus experiment, Mr. Gatiss, here he is in the flesh.
Did he write this episode, or did he just star in it?
I am going to assume that he wrote it.
For some reason, I always think he wrote it, but...
He did not write it.
Who did? Was it a Moffat episode?
It was not... No, Moffat did Blink, didn't he? Stephen Greenhorn wrote it.
Okay, so somebody completely different.
It's not a Gatiss...
it's just because he's in it.
Gatiss written thing.
Fair.
So, yeah, it's just because he's in it. But yeah, that's going to be next time. Where we look at the Lazarus experiment. And if you do have any questions for us, then please let us know over on Twitter at Kasterpod, or if you're on my lovely YouTube channel, hello.
Hi.
Over 9,000 subscribers now, getting, edging towards 10. Oh boy. And you got any questions for us there, then let us know in the comment section below. And 10k subs, I'm going to do a Q&A, by the way.
Very exciting.
Q&A about anything, not just Doctor Who.
Oh, do I get
Absolutely
to be
anything
part of that, or are you showing me out?
You can go away.
Okay, bye.
If you don't want Amy to go away, where can they find you, Amy, on your socials?
You can find me at Ames_Elizabeth. Best place to follow me is probably on Instagram because I do not tweet. And if I do, it's very rare.
And you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, that's the one, at PigWithChangeToe. And on Twitch, at Rich's Live. I build theme parks and swear at stuff. So if you want to hear uncensored, unfiltered me, then you can go to Twitch. I mean, it's pretty unfiltered on this. We just don't swear as best we can.
Yeah.
It does happen sometimes, but yeah. So yeah, next time, Lazarus Experiment. Tweet us at Kasterpod if you've got any questions regarding that. But until we see you again, thank you very much for listening and or watching. If you've just been transfixed by the waveform that takes flipping hours to get out of After Effects, you're welcome. Thank you for listening and or watching. And forgot to even say it, Happy New Year.
Oh yeah,
Happy 2022.
This is our first episode of 2022. We are recording this on January the 5th. So yeah, Happy New Year. I hope you all had the best holiday you could have under the circumstances.
And Merry Christmas as well, because we've not done an episode since Christmas, have we?
Yeah, so
yeah.
Merry Christmas, Happy
Christmas
New Year.
and New Year were good. And do you want to get married next year?
Yeah, he's not asking that to the viewers. That was a
Not to
specifically
you.
me question.
Sorry. No, that's a question for Amy. But thank you guys very much for listening. Take care of yourselves as per. See you next time for the Lazarus Experiment. Be good.
Enjoy.
We'll see you guys soon. See ya.
Bye.